it sounded corny at first when I first heard it. It's like middle schoolers aren't a problem to be solved, but a wonder to behold.
Yes.
I was like, that's so cheesy. But then as I've watched middle schoolers, I'm like, oh no, that's just true.
Yes, it's for sure true.
It's like, oh, they're not a problem to be solved because they're being distracting. Like they might be doing something tangible, and watch out. Like if you just think middle schoolers are a problem, they'll surprise you. Welcome to the Couch Time Podcast, where we give you tools to connect with your students and point them to Jesus. I am Ryan Conlon, and I am joined with
Josh Lewis.
All right. Okay, we've got two things. I want to start with the light and easy one.
Hey.
You've got a thing for the logo.
Oh, yeah, right. So, parents, I don't know if you've noticed this.
Hopefully you notice it.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. But the album cover art for the podcast was made by Josh from Bright Coal, he actually just got a new job at Vive Media. They hired him. That's kind of cool. Ooh. But anyways, he's just been awesome to work with and really helpful in making the podcast stuff look cool. So he designed the logo and everything, and then he modified the artwork, and it actually looks better than the last iteration. So shout out to Josh. Thanks so much, man.
So if you paid attention to our logo, you'll notice something different.
Bum, bum, bum.
So if you're a Florence parent, you probably already got the news yesterday that we announced. But Josh, go ahead and tell our podcast listeners the sad but also exciting news in your life.
Yeah, so I am stepping down as the director of middle school ministry, and I am stepping into a role here at the church as the communications manager. So I'm basically all things GFC communications for all the campuses. And my first day is today.
Woohoo!
Kind of crazy.
Yeah.
So we told the kids last night. It was awesome and sad, and I wasn't exactly sure what kind of response they would give, and it made me selfishly feel good. They were
Totally.
trying to figure out how to get me fired from my new role so that they'd hire me back in my old role. I was like, I love logic of middle schoolers.
Yeah.
It was awesome. They came up with 3 different things. It was great. They're like, when can we start protesting? Anyways, it was great.
It was great. I was in the tech booth when you told the students, and they started booing, and there was just anarchy with your announcement. And Todd Richmond was standing next to me. He said, "Good for Josh." That is a good.
That's a good response.
That's the response you want
right.
when you announce that you're leaving a student ministry role. That's how you know that you've had an impact and that you've connected with students.
Mm-hmm.
So. Mm-hmm. I know that I've known that this has been coming for you for a little bit, and I know it's bittersweet. It's bitter. It's a weird thing to leave a student ministry role.
Yeah,
I did that recently in my old church to come to here. It's sad, but I know that you're very excited for the new role.
Yes,
and I think you have so many giftings in the area of communications that I think will be a massive blessing to our church.
Yeah.
So excited for that.
Yeah.
Sad to lose you in the student ministry seat, but I think we're also gaining some. I'm excited for you to be. You're going to be in your sweet spot, giftings wise, and that's going to be really fun.
Yeah,
so,
I agree. I'm excited too.
Yeah, and I was. We told our Florence high school leaders last night, and I told them man, Josh has been doing this for 3 years and 9 months, and in that time, I told my leaders I hope in Lord willing, 80 years, I'm still alive. And I look back on my ministry career. I look back and hopefully I will say the COVID years were the hardest years
right.
of being a student pastor.
Yeah.
And you navigated those waters with a lot of faithfulness and grace and patience. I think those words are words that come to mind of youth leaders of or pastors in general, what they had to go through.
Yeah.
You stood in the gap when they were hiring for the position that I filled and during COVID.
Right.
For how long? A year that position was open. You had to hold that down. That is a hard season to be a student ministry director. So thank you
Yeah.
for the way that you've loved students for the last 3 years and 9 months and your faithfulness in it. So sad to lose you in the role, but excited for what's ahead. So here's what I want to do the rest of our time. I wanted to pick your brain, Josh, and this will become more relevant to our Parents of Independence and Fort Thomas students. But I wanted to ask you you've been in student ministry for over 3 years now and just grew up in student ministry, the whole thing.
Yep.
I wanted 3 takeaways, broadly speaking, from your time as a youth pastor.
Yeah.
Of like, they can either be something that surprised you, something that increasingly you became more passionate about as you were navigating the waters of student ministry, or something that you loved as your job as a middle school director. So,
That's good. Yeah.
intentionally broad, but I think it'll give us some insight into the heart of students.
Yes, agreed. And I think I might add a couple things here, but something that, surprised me, and again, parents, most of this is applicable to middle school students. Some of it's applicable to all, but I think it's so funny. So at my previous job, I worked at a video production company, and one of the things, we would be in meetings all the time with artists, right? And every meeting, they'd be looking down, sketching, whatever. And for the longest time, it drove me nuts. I'm like, dude, pay attention. Like, why aren't you paying attention? Like, that's kind of disrespectful. But they could literally tell you everything. They just had to be doing something, right? And I feel like middle schoolers are almost the exact same way, where they are paying attention when you don't think that they are. That surprised me. Like, and giving them something to do while, like, you're talking, you're having a discussion, whatever, is just super helpful. Giving them something to do with their hands. Like Pastor Peter even said, adults do that, right? That's community group coffee, like whatever. And so they're paying attention even when you don't think they are. The other piece is the questions they ask are the best. Just, there's a mix between, they're either, it feels like they're either like super off the wall or insanely insightful and refreshing. And like, they'll ask big questions about God that make adults feel uncomfortable, but the Bible has things to say about it. And so like, I think just the way their brains work and are developing, it's just really cool. It just surprised me how kind of the questions they would come up with, the different ways that they would, the things they would pick up on during lessons or talks or whatever, was just like really cool. It's like, I literally didn't think you were paying attention at all, but they could rattle off everything. Like it was pretty cool. So that was something that kind of surprised me.
Yeah, I like that. One time I heard, it's like one of these student ministry think tank things. They were like, it sounded corny at first when I first heard it. It's like, middle schoolers aren't a problem to be solved, but a wonder to behold.
Yes.
I was like, that's so cheesy. But then as I've watched middle schoolers, I'm like, oh no, that's just true.
Yes, it's for sure true.
It's like, oh, they're not a problem to be solved because they're being distracting. Like they might be doing something tangible, and watch out. Like if you just think middle schoolers are a problem, they'll surprise you.
Yes.
And they can hold on to things, and they're thinking about things when you aren't expecting it.
Right.
And they might round back in like 3 years, and they'll be like, oh, I remember when Josh, said this in his talk.
Yes.
It's like, what?
Yes.
You were like facing the opposite direction in the seat. You were listening?
Yes.
Yeah, they might have been.
Exactly. So. Well, and even too, like some of the things, like even in conversations too, they will make the most bizarre connections. So I think it's important to make sure you don't shut down these like rabbit trails. Like they might be going squirrel, but like they're actually chasing something and they just made a crazy connection. Just like wait it out. And it's not all the time, but like sometimes just like let them talk, let them make the connection. And then, oh, that's actually kind of brilliant. Like that's nuts. So yeah, absolutely. one of the things you had asked me earlier is just like something like I became passionate about over time. And I kind of, there's like sort of three-ish things I was thinking about. One is to pursue them. So middle schoolers, actually high schoolers too, but like students want to be pursued. And especially by parents and youth leaders, like that's just, they love being able to talk to adults that actually care about them, and to like kind of keep pressing, even if the first answer is like, fine, I don't know, like whatever, just like keep coming at it from different angles and really trying to pursue them. The other piece is, and we talked about this, like middle school boys just need to be told they're awesome. But like calling out the good that you see.
Yes, that's a good way to put it.
In middle school, like doing like different parent meetings and stuff, like I'm always like, so do you remember what it was like being in middle school? And like parents start cringing, right? And then I ask them to describe themselves in middle school. And like almost every time it was like awkward. It was like and there's almost like this like, I'm so glad I'm not there anymore, and different things. So think about that. Think about your experience as a middle schooler, and if you had adults who cared about you, calling out things you were good at, telling you what was true, like all these different things, instead of you just constantly trying things, failing, maybe not trying because you're afraid of failing, and like all these different things, like to have adults doing that for you, that I feel like that would just make such a big difference. Like I remember like I grew up playing on worship teams and stuff, and like having adults say like, ooh, you're actually good at guitar. Like you're really good at this. That became like so life-giving, and I got super passionate about it. And I feel like it was like something that's like, oh, I'm actually good at something. Praise God. Because that was like, you can be really hard on yourself when you're uncoordinated and all these different things. So calling out the good that you see is a part of the pursuit. But then the other thing that I love, and I also love about our volunteer leaders too, but I've also talked with other parents that do this as well, but just make it safe for them to talk about anything. I think there's just so much that's going on in a student's brain, and they're being, especially now, they're being bombarded with all these things, and they don't know what to think about it. Sometimes they will say something off the wall just to see how you're going to react to it. And if you're like, that's a good question.
Right.
Way better than like, well, that's just bad, and you shutting it down. If you can be like, that's a good question, and then you start engaging with that, then they're like, oh, this person is safe for me to talk with this about process. I don't actually know what I think, but maybe it's good, maybe it's bad. But when you make it safe, you can actually lead them and guide them towards a biblical understanding of things. But if you shut things down, then it's like, okay, we're not getting anywhere. So that was just something I increasingly have become passionate about.
Love it.
Yeah. And then you also asked about favorite part of being in middle school ministry. I think, so honestly, the volunteer leaders and camp have been my favorite parts.
Yeah.
The leaders, just to see their heart for the students. Guys, these are people who are giving up time, vacation a lot of times, weekends, mental energy to spend time with your kids. They're volunteering for this. And it's just like so cool to see people representing Jesus like that. And I told the leaders, so there's a line from the Jesus Storybook Bible, and this is how it describes God's love. His it's something like his never stopping, never giving up, unbreaking, always and forever love. And I'm like, I kind of feel like that's the love that these leaders like show to these kids. And they are showing an aspect of what God is like to these kids with the way they interact with them. And I think that's just super cool. And I really love them and respect them. And then camp is always just the best. Like, there's always a lot of like, I don't know how this is going to go going into it. But then when you're there, I think there's always something about getting away from the normal technology and things like that. But the conversations you're able to have, the time that is given for students to process life and God and the Bible and the questions that they have. I mean, this past camp, I got asked the craziest questions, like why, like kids didn't believe, like we were talking about Jesus, it was 7th grade boys, I think, and we were talking about Jesus, and they were like, I believe he's true, but I wish he could just speak to me. Mm-hmm. And I was like, can I tell you guys why I think Jesus is real? And they're like, yeah. And then they were glued to me for 30 minutes. Like, cool. I was giving my testimony. I was talking about the story of the Bible. And, like, things like camp have just been so cool. And even, I mean, I remember, like, there's even times where, like, calling out a student, but then being like, are you okay? Mm-hmm. And them just, like, breaking down. And, like, there's just times like that where, again, going back to the pursuit, it's like you gotta kind of keep going at it from different angles and praying a lot, because it's the Holy Spirit. I pray every week, like, Lord, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I need you to help. I might have prepared this whole big old spiel or whatever, and it's gonna do nothing. I may not have had a lot of time that week because of different things coming up, and then the Lord happens to use that. He uses both things, and it just really comes down to, I think, dependence on the Lord with all that. So anyways, I'm rambling, but those are the things that over the past 4 years, almost 4 years, it's just been like cool and just really stood out, and I'm grateful for the time. It's been good.
It has been good.
Yeah.
We're grateful for you and your time served in the ministry, pointing middle school students to Jesus. How I think even uniquely gifted you are. I always admire and almost envious of like your talks and your whiteboards with your drawings and little cartoons. I'm like, those are so good, and they're it adds the tangibility for middle school students to visually see God's word played out, preached to their hearts. You've done a wonderful job in that. We're gonna miss you, but excited for you in your next role.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Yeah. So moving forward,
Yep.
You will not be on the podcast.
Nope.
You're done.
I'm done.
You're free.
Yep.
Maybe we can bribe you to get some special appearances on the pod. We'll see.
If it can be helpful, I'll do it.
It would be helpful. Yeah. You can do it. Okay. So moving forward, this is fun news. Aaron Barnett is on sabbatical. Woohoo. As of today.
Yeah, he deserves it.
So yeah. Again, yeah. I feel like any pastor right now deserves a sabbatical.
It's true.
Just, man, tough. So
yes.
Yeah, so Aaron's on sabbatical. You're shifting roles at the church. So this semester, it's going to be an exhilarating time on the Couch Time podcast with your boy here and Stephen Petrie.
That's right.
We've got we're lining up some special guests too, just to mix up our voices as well.
Yeah. Yeah, because I know we sent out a survey a while back, and a lot of you were like, hey, it'd be great to have like guests have always been helpful, getting different voices, getting different parents, like different things like that. So we're listening to your feedback. They like,
Totally.
And so Ryan and Steven are kind of lining some really cool things up this semester.
Yep. So it's gonna be a great semester on the podcast. I think it'll be fun. So yeah, but that's it. Anything else you want to add?
No, it's been awesome, and I'm excited to see. I'm honestly excited to see what the Lord does in middle school ministry at Florence moving forward too, just because like this has never been my ministry. Like this is none of the ministries at Grace Fellowship are our ministries.
Yep.
It's all God's ministry. It's all about Jesus, and like Pastor Peter said yesterday, he will build his church. And so that's the encouraging part for me. So I'm excited for the future.
Yep. Excited for the future of the middle school ministry. Excited for your future and your new role as well. God's gracious and good. All good things.
Yeah. All right.
Thanks, parents. We'll catch you next week.
Sounds good.
Peace.
Hey, thanks for watching.
You can follow us on Instagram at The Couch Time Podcast.
Let us know what you thought about the podcast. Also, let us know if there's any topics or things you'd like us to cover. You can comment and email us at podcast@graceky.org.
Please like, subscribe, and share the video with other parents.